Would you like me to 4 to 6?
The beat goes on, the beat goes on. Drums keep pounding a rhythm to the brain. La-da-da-da-dee, la-da-da-da-da. Charleston was once the rage, History has turned the page, The miniskirt, the current thing, Teeny Bopper is our newborn king, And the beat goes on. The beat goes on.
The campus newspaper, first issue was July of 1876, and the first known student publication that we have in the archive is from 1830. And it's very sarcastic type of satire publication. And then in the 1850s, 60s, and early 70s, there were close to 15 or more student newspapers, we might call them underground student newspapers now, that were distributed across campus, that were very controversial. They made fun of the faculty, they made fun of the other students. So the faculty decided, along with the Board of Trustees, that it was time for Allegheny to have a more professional student paper. The Board of Trustees offered some funding for that, and ultimately the faculty decided they were going to hire 3 Allegheny students to become the first editorial board for the campus.
Yeah, absolutely. So I joined as a layout editor my freshman year, and I. Damn it. Oh, sorry.
Bye, Crowley.
Bye, Professor Crowley.
My name is Mike Crowley. We are in the Meadville Tribune newsroom. This is my desk. And at the Tribune, I'm a general assignment reporter, mostly covering city government, school boards, events that happen in the city and nearby. At Allegheny, I am the Journalism 100 instructor. I'm part of the Department of Communication, Media, and Performance. And I'm also the advisor to the campus, the student-run newspaper. Ideally, I don't really play that much of a role at all. It's student-run. The students are the ones doing the work. They're the ones doing the reporting and the writing. Like, I certainly don't deserve any credit for the work that the students are putting out. And I try to look over any of the stories that need looking over and keep an eye out, in particular, for stories that, mostly for news stories that could potentially raise questions among readers, or make somebody look bad, or that raise ethical issues that the students have less experience with. I did not think I'd be doing it for 10 years when I stepped in. I also didn't think I'd be doing this for 10 years when I stepped in as well. I have continued to enjoy it, and I feel like after a few years I started to know what I was doing. A big purpose of the Journalism 100 class is to feed potential writers into the campus, and they like it, or they get exposed to events on campus that they wouldn't have been exposed to otherwise, and they keep up with it. And some of them, a good number, become kind of passionate about it, and that's always good to see. But whatever they do, they're going to be very well served by that practice at figuring out what's important, figuring out how to communicate to an audience that may be interested but may not know enough to know why it's important. One of the things I'm most impressed by is the fearlessness of particularly the editors-in-chief over the past 10 years, but staff members generally. You know, they may be kids in some respect, right? They may be in college dealing in the type of stories you're talking about. They're dealing with adults who have higher levels of authority than the students do. That hasn't stopped them in their attempts to cover those kinds of topics. And you mentioned the idea of covering some of the deaths that have occurred over the past 10 years. And that's an uncomfortable assignment, but it's also a really important one. At the beginning of this year, we had one of those stories. Anna ultimately stepped up and took the story, and it's not going to be an enjoyable experience, but like I said, it's an important one to provide that service to the community of kind of memorializing somebody who's passed away.
One of the most challenging moments that I ever had was reporting on the 2 Allegheny community members who passed away this year, Coach Ben Maurer and also the former 3rd and 4th year class dean, Jonathan May. Those stories are always really hard to do. Sami and Roman were always responsible for doing those sorts of things when I was not editor-in-chief, but then as editor-in-chief, you're expected to be the one to step up and do those. So those were really hard. It's always difficult to go into those interviews and be asking people questions about someone who they cared very deeply about who has passed, and in both instances of these stories unexpectedly, and to sit with them in that grief and still be asking them these questions even when you yourself are feeling super sad about the situation. I think that actually the most challenging parts of being editor-in-chief for me have just been managing the workload. There's a lot that goes into it behind the scenes that not a lot of people may be aware of from the outside. Just thinking about putting the paper together for one, but then also managing our $10,000 budget, managing advertisements, doing website updates. We get people who email us all the time about random things that I have to respond to, and it's just a lot to stay up on. It doesn't ever stop, basically.
So Ida Minerva Tarbell was an Allegheny alum, class of 1880. Ida Tarbell was from Titusville and attended Allegheny fall of 1876. By the next year, Tarbell was on the editorial board for the campus newspaper, and as far as we can determine, she served in that capacity for about 1 year. And I'm convinced that this was her sort of first experience as an editor that would then, of course, lead on to her more famous career as an investigative journalist into the 20th century.
You hear this? This is crazy.
X-Acto knife and the second pictures of it.
Wait, Anna.
Thinking about what stories tend to get more traction online and what stories that may be ultimately more important, maybe don't draw the same number of views. But a few years back, we had a story that was for a long time, for more than a year, it was by far the most popular story online from the campus, and it was an opinion column about the student's cat, who happened to be a very large cat. But people just loved the story about the cat, and it was up there forever. The staff in some years has been pretty small, and that has meant some stress and some extra work on the part of staff members. Right now we have a pretty healthy sized staff. It tends to be kind of cyclical, and it depends a lot on the students themselves, right? If we get a group of students who are interested, then things go a little bit better in the newsroom. Despite certain challenges, both when it comes to student interest and college support, journalism continues to survive, and I think this year's campus staff and the issues that they've been putting out each week really shows that it's not just surviving, but thriving. Being recognized with awards and drawing views online and kind of marking the historical importance of journalism with the 150th celebration. It's a pretty good time, I think, right now for journalism at Allegheny.
Great.
Not so much anywhere else.
Okay, you're good.
Is there a lot of snow in Meadville? Well, when I was at Allegheny, in addition to working on the campus, I was the stringer for the Meadville Tribune. I would cover, a guest speaker or whatever was going on, write my story in my room in the dorm, and then walk it down the hill to the newspaper office. And in the winter, it was so slick and icy that I think 3 or 4 times, I'm lucky I didn't break my back. When I was little, my mother referred to me as a mild-mannered reporter, which was the way Clark Kent was described. One of the big stories we covered at the campus was a dispute over whether the rules for men visiting women's dorms and vice versa should change. There was this huge demonstration. I remember some of the signs. One of them was "No norms, open dorms." And this actually got more of a turnout, I think, than any of the Vietnam War demonstrations. From the time I was 16, I just love newsrooms.
Do you think it'll work? I think it'd be good.
And the people who tend to be attracted to journalism, and a lot of them are sort of wisecracking, irreverent people who are fun to be around with.
Goodbye, friends.
There will be journalism. It might take different forms, but it's super important. And I think that still editors and people who do the hiring do respect people who have worked on college papers.
Hello. I heard there was news to be covered.
Yes, there is.
There always is. All right. What's up in here, guys?
Well,
The campus was up in arms about Cambodia. There was also major concern about the shootings at Kent State in May of 1970. And so the campus newspaper those weeks reported on the protests that were happening downtown in Meadville, the sit-ins that were happening here on campus. And so those reporters from that era were reporting frontline news of a national tragedy. And students here at Allegheny were able to, as editors and writers, to reflect on those events, but also to learn how to use their voice through their articles.
So today the city of Meadville is experiencing a water main break that's left at this point 15 buildings on campus, including 8 residential buildings, completely without water. So right now we're walking to Brooks to see if we can get some student statements, because Brooks is the only dining hall that's open now. Campus is completely shut down. And people don't seem very happy today. Classes have been canceled after the 9:30 a.m. class, so hopefully we should get some good statements.
I could be incredibly old and whatever here,
She's incredibly old.
I know. And it was actually Jack and I met working on the campus.
Back then, the campus came out twice a week, and it was an 8-page tabloid. So there were a lot of pages to fill, but we did it.
Originally, the campus's offices were in what is today the Tippy Center. On the second floor, we had like 4 little tiny rooms, and it had these awful machines that we had to work on to produce basically, strips of copy that we would then wax and lay down. And
it was being up until, well, not quite dawn, but 3 a.m., 4 a.m. And it was largely because of all the manual labor involved.
I was in charge of, for a time, in assignments. And I remember one time getting down on my knees in Brooks Hall to beg somebody to write a story. And they agreed, just get up off your knees, okay? It was sort of working and feeling that you, at the end of the night, you had something that you had accomplished.
What do you want to say about the campus?
I really like doing it. I started doing the campus because I had a couple friends that were doing it, and I wanted to be friends with everybody else on staff. And then now I spend 10 hours a week on it. So
Why do you keep doing it?
Because I love to know what's going on.
So in 1969, the Association of Black Collegians is formed at Allegheny. And that particular year, several of the members of ABC were given the opportunity to put out a special issue of the campus newspaper. They called it the Black Book. There was poetry, there were some concerns about civil rights, issues that black students were dealing with on campus. That was published in 1969, and then 1 year later, Black Book 2 came out, which was another special issue by ABC, and that had the same type of format, but it was more focused on black women and their stories.
If there aren't people doing it on a campus now, there's not going to be people doing it in the big picture later. If you can't push back to a college administrator, how are you going to push back to a politician? I hope people are learning that lesson now. I wrote this during Black History Month, my senior year, February 23rd, 1989. It's Has Our Generation Killed Off the Dream, is what it was called. The Pollock quote is, "Some whites complain that blacks get a whole month to celebrate themselves. Whites should consider what the other 11 months are in reality. White history, cultural, and perpetration of our dominant place in society months." I wrote this because of what I had seen this month on campus. They had somebody come in from the Nation of Islam to speak in Fort Chapel, and there were 8 or 12 students there maybe. Rosa Parks came to speak, and there was a fair amount of people there, but not what you would expect to find to have such an important figure in American history be here. And I was just very troubled by it, which led to this. The next few weeks, there were a couple editorial pieces written supporting and opposing what I had written. I felt like it's important to start conversations, and that's what this did.
Through June of 1895, the women of campus were given a special issue. About a half dozen women who were charged with putting out the women's edition of the campus. It sort of celebrated the 25th anniversary of women admitted to Allegheny, so there were some anniversaries that were part of that year. And it was also, I think, I'm not sure if this is directly connected, but the very popular Women's Bible was published in 1895 by Elizabeth Cady Stanton. Those kind of converged together, I think, to result in this issue. And ultimately, though, the issue was meant to raise money for the Athletic Association, as it was called at the time, or the sports teams of Allegheny. And the issue is really interesting in the sense that the women editors are very much promoting women's sports on campus as something that should be considered and taken seriously.
I did it 1 through 5, and they have to give me a reason to why they rated me that. Fire. And then just to kind of gauge people's interest on that for possible future rate other people's fits, just to show how we'll be kind and respectful in the paper, and you don't have to be afraid that I'm gonna dog you or something. So yeah, there you go.
If the campus keeps doing what it was doing when I was there, I would be very proud. You can do what you want with the campus. You can start Ask Allegheny and go around and do man on the street interviews.
The campus?
I do read the campus.
That's amazing. Thank you. Do you read the campus?
Sometimes, if my friends write articles or if I see the front cover and I think it looks interesting.
No.
Sometimes. I do read the campus.
Yes, every week.
I do.
I have.
No.
No, sorry.
That's okay.
I do not. I don't.
I do not. No, I don't. Nah.
Sometimes.
Why not, guys?
I don't know.
I can't read.
Because I never have the time. I don't know, I just don't ever.
Because I honestly have a lot to read for my classes, and I'd rather not have to read something else too.
Why not?
I honestly didn't know what it was until I seen a video the other day.
I just don't have the time for it, I feel like.
I have never, no.
Occasionally, yeah.
I do.
I do sometimes.
Sometimes.
Yeah, I love it.
Sometimes. Sometimes.
I do.
I love reading the ASG article every week.
Sometimes.
What would make you read it more?
Is it digital?
Yeah, it's online.
No. I'm sorry.
I see it, like, if there's, like, ads on my Instagram, I'll read, like, the titles, and if it's interesting, I'll go to it, but most of the time I don't.
I have not. Sometimes on occasion I do.
I do not, but I do watch Ask Allegheny all the time. Once in a while, yeah.
Sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah.
Sometimes, yes.
You're making me nervous. Occasionally.
I don't. Yeah.
Every week.
What would make you want to read it more?
Because you just told me to.
Yeah, I read the campus newspaper.
I check it out sometimes, yeah.
Sometimes.
I don't have a lot of time in my day, but I feel like I also don't know where they're at, to read them. So
I look at it if I'm in it, but
I do every so often. Every so often is good.
can you bring a gossip column back? I did see the one where they had like the gossip column, and they had the reveal of the guy that used to do it. I think we should bring that back.
I do every now and then.
Sometimes.
No, not really.
No, I don't read the campus.
Yeah.
Do you like it?
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
No.
Why not?
I don't know.
Do you read the campus?
No.
You should. You should definitely pick it up. You should pick one up. You guys should continue to do that. You should.
I will.
So you guys should pick one up every now and again. Just look at the picture book. You should. It's right over there. I really deeply, deeply encourage you to. Well, it is digital, and you can follow us on Instagram. Here to remind you, the campus exists, guys. Now you all know. You guys should read it more. It's in the front of the campus center.
All right, sweet.
Will you?
No.
Each year today we have what's called the Compost, April Fool's issue. And one of the earliest April Fool's issues we found was from 1936. And that issue was called The Canned Pus. Then later we see the compost sort of emerging in the late 70s. And of course we have that today. It's had several different names over the years, but as far as we know, the earliest April Fool's goes back to about the 1930s.
The beat goes on. The beat goes on. Drums keep pounding a rhythm to the brain. La-da-da-da-dee. La-da-da-da-da. Charleston was once the rage,
History has turned a page,
The miniskirt, the current thing,
Teeny Bopper is our newborn king,
And the beat goes on. The beat goes on. Drums keep pounding a rhythm to the brain. La-da-da-da-dee. La-da-da-da-da. The grocery store, the supermarket.
little girls still break their hearts,
And men still keep on marching off to war.
Electrically they keep a baseball score.
And the beat goes on. The beat goes on. Drums keep pounding a rhythm to the brain. La-da-da-da-dee. La-da-da-da-da. Grandmas sit in chairs and reminisce.
Boys keep chasing girls to get a kiss.
The cars keep a going faster all the time.
Mom still cries, hey buddy, have you got a dime?
goes on. The beat goes on.
You want to put it again? Put it in one more time.
Drums keep pounding a rhythm to the...
Sorry.
We're asking everyone this question, and feel free to think about it for a second. But if you had to pick one word to describe the campus, what would you say?
It's hard to sum it up in one word. I think, joyful, challenging, community.
One word to describe the campus, I would say significant.
I mean, the thing that comes to mind is that it was
One word.
chaotic.
Anxious, but positive in parentheses.
For me, the word would be inspiring.
Rewarding in so many ways.
I have multiple words in my head.
Yeah.
Scrappy.
The one word I would use to describe my time with the campus, I think, would be rewarding.
It's that the campus was, for me, a clubhouse. It was a group of like-minded people all doing something hard at once, late at night, and felt like sticking it together with chewing gum and baling wire every week.
Proud. I'm deeply proud of the campus. Whenever I see the campus, I feel pride in Allegheny and our students.
Exhausting.
Educational.
Exciting. Impactful.
I'm going to go with aspirational. Aspirational because there was definitely a sense that what we were doing at the campus was, important and good. But then coming out into the real world, right, working in a different sort of newsroom, the quality of work at the campus is kind of insane.
I think student journalism is more important than ever. I think at this moment in time when we're facing so many public collective crises about how journalism works and how the news media serves us, I think that having a really small local paper like the campus serve as a learning ground for students to figure out how good journalism works, what it looks like behind the scenes and what goes into it, is a really important media literacy, educational opportunity for students. I also think that the campus, over its 150 years, has been a really important part of helping the Allegheny community feel connected to itself and know what's going on. And so I guess as we're, continuing forward after our 150th anniversary, I'm hoping that the campus continues to do all of those things, be a forum for public discussion about hard issues, connect people in the community to each other, serve as a learning opportunity for students, and continue to, demand accountability and demand that the Allegheny community be the best version of itself that it can be.
Professor Crowley, do we have a verdict?
I've checked with the Dominion voting machines.
Oh.
It's A.B. and Ben in a landslide.
Aren't you the next editors in chief? Congratulations.
The beat goes on. The beat goes on.
Drums keep pounding a rhythm to the brain. La-da-da-da-dee, la-da-da-da-da.
Charleston was once the rage,
History has turned the page,
The miniskirt, the current thing,
Teeny Bopper is our newborn king,
And the beat goes on. The beat goes on.
Drums keep pounding a rhythm to the brain. La-da-da-da-dee.